Hello everyone, so it's Friday, so I'm here to do my Friday reads. I've read 4 books this week, not too bad, so let's just get into it. The first book I read this week, it was for Caribathon, and it was Augustown by Kei Miller, and this follows the story of Augustown, which was a real place, or is a real place in Jamaica. And it starts in the 20s and it goes all the way to the 80s, and it follows Matafi and her family and friends, and basically what this explores is the dynamics of race and class in Jamaica, how blacks were considered to be lower class and whites higher class, but then all the middle mixed race kids could go up and down, and how that works. It also explains how black people then want to rebel and how that is dealt with, and it was a very interesting book, and I learned a lot about Jamaica and how the race system works there. So I really recommend. It's also very readable and very beautifully written. So yeah, this one was a win. The next one I read, also for Caribathon, was Golden Child by Claire Adam, and this follows a family in Trinidad and Tobago. They are from Indian descent, and the father, Clyde, and mainly the 2 twin boys that they have, but the 2 twin boys are Peter and Paul. Peter is the kind of brilliant, well-behaved boy that everyone wants, and Paul, it's a little bit more rough, and it explores how that happened, because Paul had some complications when he was born, so from that moment on everything is attributed to those difficulties. So if he has problems in school, it's not like, oh, you should maybe work harder. It's more like, oh, you had those difficulties, so you'll never be able to do anything. So it follows that dynamic with Clyde and Paul especially, and sort of what it means to become a parent and what it means to be a parent, even if the child that you have is not the child you wanted. So yeah, that's the basic setup of the book, and then it's around the middle of the book. Well, it starts with them not knowing where Paul is and looking for him, and then that develops into something much bigger than I was expecting. Yeah, it was the ending was was very impactful, and overall the book, I think it was well written and it was very interesting. But for me personally, those are not topics that I'm overly interested in, and also the thrillery bits of the book were maybe not for me, because I'm not so much into thrillers. So this one was a bit of a mixed bag, but I'm glad I read it. The next one I finished was White Fragility by Robin di Angelo, and I read this for the Blackout readathon that Books with Shy organized. And this one basically focuses on how to talk about race to white people, because most white people would get really defensive and have this association that racism is bad, therefore I'm a good person, I'm not racist, and that's the end of the conversation. But this book talks about how we have to recognize that we are part of a bigger system, and the bigger system is racist, and we have been brought up in that system, and therefore we are racist, and the only way to change that is to learn, accept criticism, and fight for other white people to see that as well, and not just go all defensive every single time that something like this isn't mentioned. So yeah, that was interesting. I think for me personally, a lot of these thoughts I have already had, so it didn't add so much information. I like the end, the bit where she gives examples of how are good ways to deal with this, and if someone gives you criticism like I was offended by this was racist, how to accept that and how to take it to heart and actually act on it. So yeah, I like that part because it's very often that people tell you, oh, you shouldn't do that or you shouldn't do that, but it's not so often that someone will tell you maybe this is an alternative to how to do it. I think it's always very important to give positive examples on how to act if you're saying that something is wrong, how give alternatives, because many people might not have thought about the alternatives and cannot see how to deal with that. So yeah, I thought that was good. I will say it's a very important book that many people should read, but it was quite a basic level, and I have been reading a lot of books about racism, especially in the US, in the last couple of weeks, because I knew a lot about, well, not a lot, but I have researched more about colonialism before in Africa rather than how the black history in America was. So yeah, I think that in that sense this is a very introductory basic book, and once you read this you can read all of the other great books that people have been recommending in these past few weeks. So that was my thoughts on that. And then the last one that I finished yesterday is Small Island by Andrea Levy, and this one is about two couples. One of them is from Jamaica, and they moved to England during the Windrush generation, so in the late 40s. And the other couple is an English couple, and it talks about the dynamics between those two groups, how black people were treated in England at that time, and how even though they had British passports, because Jamaica was supposed to be British, nobody treated them like citizens there. It was like second-class citizens. They couldn't get good houses, they couldn't get good jobs, yeah, and they were always treated like a lesser people. So that was very interesting. Also, the Jamaican woman Hortense, she's proud and educated, and I love it. Changes perspective between these four people, and when her perspective came up, I loved how witty she was. Like, why is this uneducated, dirty woman, white woman telling me things like I'm a child and I'm fully educated and like my own person? Why is this happening? This makes no sense to me. They have no idea. Yeah. Anyway, like those rumbles of Hortense. When she got mad about people treating her like a child when she was this proud, educated woman from Jamaica. I love those parts. Yeah, this book also, at the beginning it focuses a lot more on Gilbert and Hortense, which are the Jamaican couple, and in the late half of the book, or like late third of the book, it goes much more into Bernard and Queenie, which are the English couple. And I have to say I prefer Hortense and Gilbert's point of view. The end, like, it went a bit weird in my opinion. There was no sign or not sign that I saw of what was gonna happen, and when that happened, the ending happened, I was a bit like, is this so that we can finish the book, or is this like, I don't know, I didn't feel like it fitted completely, but overall it was a good book and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, Now, those are the 4 books that I read this week. I am in the middle of several things. I mean, I am in the middle, but not actively reading Les Miserables, Flights by Olga Tokarczuk, and The Old Drift by Namwali Serpell, and The Old Drift by Namwali Serpell. I put those a bit on pause for Caribathon, but I will pick them up hopefully next week. Then I'm also reading Stuff from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. I'm reading that in audiobook when I go for rants and things, and I'm really liking that. That gives a very detailed history of mainly slavery in the US, or at least I'm still in the slavery era, and how really like the conditions were not good and the way they treated them like animals, and how that limited their opportunities from the beginning. So yeah, that's also quite detailed and interesting, and I'm enjoying that. And the last one I started last night is a book to price book, so I cannot really talk about this in this video, but yeah. And then the next things that I want to read, well, these are more like a pile of possibilities. I'm probably not going to be able to read all of these things, but today is Juneteenth, and there is the Blackathon being organized, which normally is just for Black History Month in February, because of all that is happening with the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all the other victims of police brutality in the US. The organizers have decided to make 48-hour readathon in which we read Black queer books. So I have chosen 2 books for this. I might finish them, I might not, but yeah, this is my possibilities. So the first one is Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Denis-Benn. Nicole Denis-Benn is a Black Jamaican lesbian author, and as far as I know, Here Comes the Sun talks about a Jamaican village in which women decide to take the power away from men, and the dynamics of what happens. I have heard amazing things about Nicole Denis-Benn, and also her new book Patsy I really want to read, but I couldn't have an available copy, so I'm going to read Here Comes the Sun, and I'm very excited about that one. And the other one I'm planning to read in the middle of Here Comes the Sun is, well, I'll put the cover here, but it's a poetry collection by Dean Atta, and Dean Atta is a British gay writer that his parents come from Jamaica, as far as I know, so they all both fit on Caribathon as well as Blackathon. So yeah, those are the 2 books I'm planning to read this weekend. And then after the weekend, I'm planning to, well, read, apart from the books that I have already started, I still have House of Ashes by Monique Roffey from Caribathon. I know Caribathon finishes on Sunday, but I thought I'm still interested in this, and I still have it from the library, so I might just as well read it. And this one is about an imaginary Caribbean island in which a new political system is placed, and I believe it's fantastical in some ways, and it's like a political fantasy, so I'm really excited about this one. I think it will be very very interesting. Another one that I want to read this week is Frankenstein by Jeanette Winterson, and this one combines transgender issues and AI and a lot of different things. I have heard very mixed things about this. Some people love it, some people hate it, but from what I've heard, the topics that are explored are very interesting. And Jeanette Winterson, I have read before several things, and some of them I like, some of them I don't. So I want to know where I fall into this. And this, because it has transgender topics, it fits with the Pride Month as well. So I wanted to read that in Pride. And then the other book that I want to read this coming week is called Two Blankets, Three Sheets by Rodaan Al Galidi. And this one is it's a memoir of a Syrian refugee in the Netherlands. And I think that is very appropriate and very interesting as well. With all these Black Lives Matter protests, I have been thinking a lot about marginalized groups in the Netherlands, and I know that black people are marginalized. We have Zwarte Piet. If you don't know, you can Google it, which is terrible. But I think that here one of the more prevalent and more one of the issues that affect the most people is the treatment of refugees and Muslims in the country. There has been a lot of Islamophobia in the last few years, and I think this book would be very appropriate to learn a little bit more about that experience. We also have a friend that is a refugee in the Netherlands, and he has been visiting quite a lot the last few months because he lives in one of those refugee facilities that is in the middle of nowhere, and he's just bored out of his mind. So he comes to visit us quite often, and he has been talking about his experience. He's not from Syria, but he has been talking about his experience as a refugee. So I thought it would be very interesting to learn a little bit more about that experience. And this book came recommended, I don't remember, I think it was Leo from A Little Book Life that recommended it, but I might be wrong. But anyway, I have seen it recommended, so I'm excited to read that. So yeah, those are the books that I'm planning to tentatively read. I know it's a lot, but we'll see how much I get done. I hope you're having a good Juneteenth, and I'll talk to you next week.